Hey, how you doing?
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
All is well. All is well. Thank you so much for coming on the platform. I really appreciate you taking out the time to stop by.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Definitely, definitely. It's an honor. I appreciate the work that you've been doing. For the viewers who may not recognize you, let them know who you are and definitely what you do.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Blake Stringer. I'm currently the director of the Center for Aviation Studies here at the Ohio State University in Columbus. I've been here about a year. Before that, I was at Kent State University in the College of Aeronautics and Engineering in Northeast Ohio. And before that, I spent 20 years in the Army as an Army aviator, pilot, and research and development.
Wow, that's amazing. I have to ask you, when did you develop this passion for aviation and aerospace and aeronautics?
That's a good story and kind of a funny story. You probably, everyone, when you talk to your mom, they probably have that one event in your life where you really embarrassed your mom. And I was a really small kid, and we were flying from Birmingham, Alabama to Dallas, Texas. It was my first time on an airplane. I can remember bits and pieces, but not all of it. And I remember getting to the door of the airplane and starting to yell and scream because I was scared. And I put my hands on the door, embarrassed my mom very badly. But then we got in to the airplane and then flying. Of course, the flight attendants came through and gave you the little wings. And back then, you could actually go up into the cockpit. And I remember going, the flight attendant, she took me up to the cockpit, and the pilots were saying hi and showing me some of the instruments and stuff. And from that time on, so that was probably about 6 or 7 years old, uh, probably six. And that was when it started, and it never stopped.
Wow. Okay. Okay. That's inspiring. I can relate to a degree. I'm a world traveler. I've been to 70 countries, but one of my
Wow.
greatest fears that I ever had was flying. I started traveling. I would take the Greyhound. I took the Greyhound from Seattle. No, I'm sorry, from Miami to Seattle because I didn't want to fly. So I was on the bus for like a week. But ultimately, before I could become that world traveler, I had to overcome that fear. I was really terrified of airplanes.
Oh, that's right. And it's a
Let me
rational
see.
fear.
You had mentioned now. You mentioned,
I was going to say it's a rational fear.
yeah, yeah,
And
definitely.
when
But
you go ahead.
yeah, I edited. It's pre-recorded. You go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say it's a very rational fear.
Is it
One of
is
the
it delayed?
things
Is it a delay?
sometimes there is and sometimes there isn't. Right now, I hear you just fine. Um, we should be okay in here, though. We're in my office, which it gets pretty good content. But it is a very
Uh,
rational fear to have a fear of flying. And one of the things that I always tell people is a lot of people don't like the bumps and the ups and downs. But when you remember that you're just cruising through the atmosphere at about 530 miles an hour, and those bumps are just like hitting a bump on the road. And once you realize that you're moving really fast through the air, suddenly the bumps don't seem so bad.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I really enjoy flying nowadays. You had mentioned, I believe, Kent State and Ohio State. I'm
Mhm.
currently in Ghana. I'm in West Africa, but I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. So
Right, right. I saw the 216 that you have. So what time is it in Ghana then? Is it 9, 10 o'clock at night?
we're about 4 hours ahead, so it's
Oh,
about
okay.
7 p.m.
Okay. All right. That's
Yeah, yeah. So I want to ask you more about now you was in the military, you was in the army. What inspired you to join and were you the first person in your family or do you have a history of people, that came before you that joined?
that's a good question. I had an uncle who was in the Navy and flew for the Navy, and he was the person. His family were the ones we were going to visit that first time I flew. And because of his uh, influence of aviation, and we would go and he had cockpit layouts, that he would use when he had to practice. And this was a long time ago. This was back in the 1970s. And so just being around um, him for when we were around him, that really inspired me to do that. And that's when I went that route. But he was the only one who had military service.
Oh, okay. That's cool. That's inspiring as well. I mean, uncles are very important, you know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So that's good that he was able to, plant a major seed, a positive one at that. You made a career out of it, you know?
Right, right, right.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Now I can ask you this. Now you were in Army Aviation and Army Research Laboratory. Like, if you can talk about it, what exactly was your job and what did you have to do?
Oh, sure. So for my first 8 years in the military, I was operational. So flying helicopter units, and we would practice missions and things like that. This was all pre 9/11. It's 9/11 today, but pre 9/11 2001. Um, and then because of my education background and desires, I started to lean more toward the technical side of the Army. And with that, the Army sent me for graduate school, so master's and PhD, and then got into the research and development. So for Army Research Lab, I was the uh, chief of the propulsion division, and so what we did was we did research in the areas of automotive propulsion and drivetrains, transmission systems. So how could we improve both Army ground vehicles and helicopters?
Wow. Okay. Okay. That's real cool. Now I wanted to ask you a little bit about your time at Kent.
Mhm.
Now you founded the first Aeronautics Engineering program there.
That's correct. I was hired there to start the engineering program. Kent State had never offered an engineering program before, and so uh, we got connected. They hired me. Kent State was very good to me. I enjoyed my 10 years there. Really enjoyed my time there, and so had the opportunity to help build up the College of Aeronautics and Engineering there, and it was a really fun time to develop a program, to develop a curriculum, to help hire faculty, to teach that, to be able to work with students. Uh, and get them oriented into a career. A lot of good connections, a lot of student connections that I still have there today. Yeah, it was a great time there.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Now I can ask you, what is the difference between like say aeronautics and aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering? It sounds fun and exciting, but I'm sure it's probably some differences.
There are some differences. So mechanical would be the broad umbrella, and then below that, um, sometimes they're separate, sometimes they're not. Is aerospace engineering, and you have two words there: aerospace. And under that, you have aeronautics and astronautics. And so aeronautics deals with aircraft platforms that move through the air. Astronautics deals with satellites, rockets, things that eventually get into space. And so there are some institutions that have aeronautical engineering, some that have astronautical engineering, or they combine it into one and call it aerospace engineering. And so aerospace has a little bit of things that move through the air and a little bit of things that um, deal with space.
Okay, okay. I appreciate you breaking that down. It all sounds amazing. Now I can ask you now, you at Ohio State, and you're the director for the Center of the Aviation Studies. What
Mhm.
exactly is your role and how long have you been doing that?
So I accepted this position a year ago, and so I've been doing this for about a year. Um, what I do is I manage the aviation program here I manage the academic part. And so aviation in itself is not the same as aeronautical, astronautical, aerospace engineering. Aviation is where we really focus on, operationally speaking, aviation. Do you want to be a pilot? Do you want to be an air traffic controller? Do you want to work in a maintenance repair facility? Do you want to work for an airline? Do you want to get into aviation finance, aviation management? Do you want to study air transportation systems? There are a lot of job functions besides just pilot. Or do you want to be a pilot? Um, that certainly is the most expensive uh, of all the things that you can do in aviation. But there is just such a wide infrastructure and such an importance to aviation. You said you're a world traveler and been to so many countries. Just all the things that, as someone who uses it so much, it's even still surprising to me what you find, the types of jobs, right? And I've been in this career for 30 years and still just finding out who does what and where they do it and all of the importance that it takes. There are just a lot of opportunities. And so what we do here, back to your original question, at Ohio State, we have students who are majoring in aviation across 3 programs. They're either doing air transportation in our College of Arts and Sciences, they're doing aviation management in our College of Business, or they're doing an aviation degree in our College of Engineering.
Oh, okay. Wow, wow. Yes, I really appreciate everybody that's in their field because I've definitely utilized it. Now I can ask you, how long does it take to become a pilot? That's something I never really thought about.
That's a really good question. And the easy 2 words, it depends. And so um, there is the Federal Aviation Administration, or the Department of Defense for military pilots, right? They have certification requirements, and those are designated as a mix of number of flight hours that you have to have in an aircraft and or a simulator, and then a certain level of ground instruction. And so there are several certificates, and at Ohio State, we're a collegiate aviation institution. There are several of those around, about 131 of those between the US and Canada and American territories. Let's start with your most basic, which is a private pilot. So I just want to learn how to fly an airplane. And when it's sunny outside, I can go rent a small airplane and go fly. That's your most basic private pilot certificate. Now, if I want to fly in bad weather, I need to learn how to fly just relying on my instruments alone. So that's an instrument rating. Now, if I want to be able to charge people money to fly with me, right, that's a commercial rating. So that's 1, 2, that's the 3rd rating that you have. And then the next ratings are generally, now I want to teach people how to fly. So commercial flight instructor rating. And then if I want to be able to instruct someone to fly instruments, that's a certified flight instrument instructor. And then the last one we offer is a multi-engine. So I want to fly on something with more than one engine. And so we offer the pilot, the instrument, the commercial, the CFI, the CFII, and the multi-engine. So that's 6 certificates that we offer. And then once you have that, then you'll normally go out and just begin to log flight hours. And then once you reach a certain number of flight hours, you can go for your airline transport pilot or cargo transport pilot certificate. And that's where you get up and you're flying the type of planes that you're flying on when you fly around the world.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I appreciate you breaking that down for me. Now, you said you took the position as a director a year ago. Are you still teaching courses as well, or are you strictly just directing?
Right. I do this semester. I'm teaching my first course down here. an introduction. It's an introduction to aviation. So a lot of freshmen or people who have transferred into this major, and just giving them a flavor and an overview of the aviation industry in general. Um, and so what's neat about this course right now is uh, I have some background information, but essentially I'm giving them topics and they go look it up and find out the topics, and then they present to each other in class. And so there's a lot of self-discovery in this, especially at the freshman level. But they're doing it in teams, and they're having to get up and present. So a lot of the skills that you want them to have that they may not have, they're really starting to develop early on, so they get more comfortable with it before they get to a job and they have to present in front of people, and they're going, oh my gosh, how do I do this? I've never done this before, right? So um, and it's also interesting because one of the things that I have them do is you have to you have to provide, hey, this is something that I didn't know that was really interesting, that I had no idea existed, right? What's that little nugget of information that I didn't know that I discovered on my own? And that's just interesting to see the students, come through and discover some things, and get some neat pieces of knowledge about things that they really had no idea.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that could definitely be empowering. Now, I can ask you. You've been in this realm in this field for a few decades now. Have you seen a growth? Are more people interested in getting into this field, or has it been about the same?
Um, since the pandemic of 2020, we've really seen an increase. So, aviation does not exist without pilots, right? Ultimately, you have to have airplanes and you have to have pilots to fly the airplanes. Um, we knew in the industry that there would be a looming pilot shortage as just the age of the pilots increased and they began to retire, and things like that. Well, in 2020, when we had to change the way we did things, a lot of pilots retired suddenly. And then building back after pandemic years, the pilot shortage really hit quickly. And so uh, they were just, hey, we need pilots, we need pilots, we need pilots. And there is a high return on the investment, for pilots. Ultimately, it's a pretty good salary. Um, and so we have seen a growth here at Ohio State in 5 years. Since 2018, our student population in aviation has doubled uh, over that time. So we're just over 500 or so students in the program, and we've doubled since 2018, pre-pandemic levels. So
Okay, okay. I appreciate you sharing that. And it's amazing because, a lot of times we take for granted the people that make these things happen, so we can travel to our favorite destinations or to visit our loved ones. So that's really, really cool. Now I can ask you this. Have you ever thought about doing maybe like a documentary or writing a book about, your experiences and, the things that you have accomplished?
sure. Actually, I'm I have a co-authored book that's in edits right now. A good friend of mine from the Air Force Academy who wrote a book. It's on flight mechanics. It's a very textbook, technical book. A lot of equations and things in it. Is actually in press right now to be published, and it should be published by the end of the year. That's exciting to see my name, as the second author on a book. That's really exciting. Um, Documentary, I haven't really thought about that so much. Probably in my previous role at Kent State, I was more on the engineering side of things than aviation. Um, but aviation itself, the history, the things that we do, airplanes and those types of things, probably lends itself better to a documentary than traditional engineering did. So it's exciting. It's a dynamic industry. It changes quickly in some ways, but it stays the same quickly, but it stays the same in other ways. Um, but that's about as far as I've gotten in terms of thinking about that. It might be nice to do it, but writing the part of this book that I wrote was that was a lot of work. It is a lot of work to put that together.
Yeah, I definitely take my hat off to you for taking out the time to do that. I'm sure a lot of people will definitely utilize the information. Um, Now, I wanted to ask you this because you actually hands on, with aerospace and working with students and stuff.
Mhm.
When we mentioned documentaries, but when you watch films, you look at Hollywood. Of course, the movies have to be cinematic, but just from your perspective, do you feel like they have an accurate portrayal, even from the military or just regular pilots and stuff like that? Do you think they get it right, or are they like all way off base?
There is always some element of drama or theatrics, right, in a Hollywood movie. Uh, for the most part, they do get it right. They do hire technical experts to help. And so I would say, I guess one of the newest movies around is Top Gun Maverick. It's a very exciting movie. It's a sequel to the first Top Gun. A lot of that, movie is fairly realistic, except for the beginning part where he's going Mach 10, and you can still see him in the sky. That part is a little that's a little bit of a stretch, but um, the rest of it is pretty decent. And even the historical movies. Um, that most of them I think do a pretty good job of trying to be faithful to the story. There may be one or two storylines that are made up, or done for effect. But a lot of the movies that deal with especially historical aviation, the general premise of the story is very accurate.
Okay, okay. So I got maybe like one more question.
Sure.
I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but in terms of like the technological, advances or changes,
Mhm.
what have you seen and where do you see things going in terms of aerospace and aviation? Because like maybe I was a kid in the '90s, so we think in the 2000s we're gonna have flying cars and
Right.
like the movies, the Jetsons or something like that. But do
Yeah.
you see, anything cool or exciting like that changing maybe in the next decade?
Uh, I do. And so, if you look at aviation and aerospace, there are two branches of things that are very important. Uh, one are things that go very fast, and so I referenced the Top Gun Maverick context of him going Mach 10. That is a very active area of research because that technology is highly sought after by the United States and its allies and its adversaries. So that is a predominant. But then you go slow things down, and over the past 10 years, uh, maybe a little more than 10 years now, we have drones that have come around and quadcopters and these little platforms that you can go out and put a camera on and do a roof inspection. You use it for real estate, going through and showcasing a property. Kids like to fly them. Kids like to race them. You can use it for some research things. That type of activity is the other really disruptive technology in aviation. And so now we're looking at those, what were smaller drones, and now we're scaling them up to larger platforms. And so you have several startup companies that are out there that are trying to make larger platforms that are electric, that we can fly, air taxis. And so you mentioned the Jetsons. And so the Jetsons platforms are not, they're being flown now. Not everybody has them, but those platforms do exist. And they're going through a certification process to be able to fly with from the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. So that is a really exciting piece too. In Ohio, and institutions all around Ohio, that would include Kent State, Ohio State, that would include several other institutions are working, and the state itself is investing a lot in what's called advanced air mobility. And that's taking these electric platforms that look like really large drones. They may or may not have a pilot in them. And how do you build an economy around that infrastructure? And then how does it work with the rest of aviation? That's another big piece.
Wow, that's definitely interesting, and I look forward to that. And definitely, I look forward to the work that you have coming in the future as well. And I want to thank you again. I really, really appreciate everything that you have done, especially in the Ohio area. And man, thank you so much for
Well,
coming by. And
thanks.
thank the viewers. Uh-huh.
Thanks, Dave, for having me. It's been great. And as someone who lived in Northeast Ohio before moving down here, I can say, there are parts of Northeast Ohio that I miss too.
Yeah, yeah,
Living up there
definitely,
too. It's a great place to live. All right. Well, thank
definitely.
you so much for your time today, and thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, it's an honor. So all right, take care now.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.
All right.